Welcome back. If you're just joining us, this is State of Press coming to you live from the Abuja studios of KAFTAN Television. And now we've been joined by a guest. His name is Etaba Agbo. He's a public affairs analyst and also a legal practitioner. And together we shall be taking a look at some of the headlines we just read out to you. And this is also a reminder that our phone lines are open for you to join the conversation. Thank you so much for joining us on the program.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
Okay, based on the reports we just saw, we saw the issue of the Naira redesign and cashless policy, and lots of Nigerians are complaining about the short period of time. January 31st is just almost 13 days away from now, and lots of people have not even come across the new Naira note. What are your thoughts on this policy? Do you think it's sustainable?
All right. Well, I think that on the issue of the cashless policy as proposed by the Central Bank of Nigeria, first, we must recognize the fact that the law enables the CBN to engage in activities that will ensure price stability and monetary stability in the country. And so, in the course of carrying out this mandate that is given to them by the enabling law that establishes the CBN has a duty also to ensure that these policies are implemented in a way that it does not cause undue hardship on the citizens. How do I mean? Now, given the circumstance that we find ourselves, I mean, the vast majority of Nigerians are yet to even lay their hands on the new Naira note. So they have no idea what it looks like. I'm sure that if you make your way to the rural areas, you discover that most Nigerians do not even know whether there's a policy like that. So all of these realities boils down to the fact that the CBN has to do more in terms of ensuring that there's that wide reach that this policy has on Nigerians, in terms of making sure that these Naira notes, the new Naira notes, are made available for citizens to lay their hands on, because you can't be saying by 31st of January the old notes we no longer have access to them, or we should no longer use them, and then we should use the new note. Whereas in the reality, this new note is not even available for people to use. So how do you make people use something that they know nothing about, or even do not even know what it looks like? So it is a duty, like I said, the CBN has to ensure that in order to give life to this policy of redesigning the Naira notes, they should take a step further to ensure that banks have access to the new Naira notes, and beyond having access to the new Naira notes, these notes are made available so that individuals can lay their hands on them. Because personally, I think I can count just a few times I've seen and I've laid my hands on them. I think like 3 times or so.
Oh, okay, I think you've seen it, or you've laid your hands on it more than I have, because it's quite interesting. From what we heard at the beginning, this whole policy is also, aside the fact that it's been put in place to help stabilize the economy and all of that, it's also been put in place to help curb vote buying. And you know that elections are just few days, let me not say a month, few days away from now. So in this situation, I think that's why they are trying to make sure that by the end of this January, the old note phases out, so that you don't see bulk money in circulation as much. But then, like you said, lots of people don't even know, especially in rural areas. They've not heard about it. Most times, I hear people when they say, when you give somebody a new note, the person rejects it. No, I don't want that. Like so, in this situation now, don't you think the aim of this policy has been defeated? Because looking at it from where I sit, I don't think it's going to. 31st I don't think that's going to stand. But the CBN is solid on that choice of 31st of January. But from where I stand, I don't see it coming, because lots of people don't know, and it's going to take a lot of sensitization and awareness to make people understand that, okay, this is what we are going with now. So with the short period of time, don't you think that policy, or the main aim for the Naira redesign, has been defeated?
Well, I think that coming from the angle of the fact that the CBN engaged in this policy in order to ensure that they curb vote buying and incidents of politicians stockpiling our Naira notes just for the purpose of bringing them out on election day for mobilization and other political activities, I think to that extent, that policy will be defeated if the 31st date, as at then, we do not have a concrete arrangement where individuals now have access to.
But do you think it's possible to have a concrete arrangement?
Well, it may not be possible. It may not. And I'm saying this because, we've seen, I think sometime in December when the policy came up and then they redesigned the note. Up to this moment, people are still complaining about the fact that they do not have access to this note. So what is the possibility that in few days to come that we are going to have 31st, we will get to 31st of January that this Naira will be in circulation. And mind you, if the primary aim of redesigning the note is also the fact that they want to curb incidents of vote buying, then I think that the CBN also has a responsibility to ensure that there's even distribution of the new Naira note in terms of making it available to individuals. I mean, it would be heartbreaking and it would be very disheartening for us to have a situation where in a bid to cure something, we are also part of the problem. Why am I saying this? We should not have incidents where the new Naira note is made available to a certain group of politicians, and then it's all the Nigerian citizens who should naturally have access to these things, because I mean they can't go about their day-to-day activities without this Naira note. They do not have access to it. So all of these realities are some of the bad sides that we are hoping, as citizens of this country, that the CBN will also take caution and ensure that this policy is implemented in the best interest of Nigerian citizens. Because like I said, if you say you are redesigning Naira notes, which is, I mean, the legal tender and something that it is very much impossible for us to go a day without having to buy something with the Naira note, then they should be able to make it available, because not making it available and saying that on this date we are going to stop or will not allow persons to do buying and selling with the old Naira note, it will cause undue hardship. And I do not even want to paint the realities that will occasion. But it's going to be, I mean, a very bad situation that, I mean, how do we now go about buying goods and services in our country? And for those who are yet to even, who may have the old Naira notes at their disposal at that date, at the last date when yes, it means they are holding something that is now very useless and you can't even use it for anything. So all of these realities, I think the CBN has to take drastic measures to ensure that the policy is implemented in the best interest of Nigerians, because the realities on the negative side are much more disastrous than what we can imagine here.
All right, now let's go into what we have on some of our national dailies. And this headline from the Vanguard this morning, when I was reading it, I found it very, very interesting. It says, alleged graft and treason. Tinubu, Atiku seek each other's arrest and disqualification. And the writers to that story says, APC presidential candidate campaign fires first and recalls VP's quarrel with Obasanjo over SPV accounts. It says Atiku retorts sides for future of US case over narcotics. So now the politics is getting dirtier. Did you see all of this panning out, and how do you think this is going to end up?
Well, first let me say it's an interesting, we are indeed in very interesting times in our polity. I mean, just few days to Nigerians making a decision on who becomes the president of our country. We are having a scenario where the two seemingly leading parties in our country are trading words and of course trading accusations and allegations here and there. First, let me say that, I mean, this part that they've decided to do is what we could call political propaganda, and it's unfortunate that we live in a country where those things that should be taken seriously, we don't take them serious. And how do I mean? If, for example, we have allegations as to corrupt practices against a presidential candidate or against both presidential candidates, in an ideal society, should those things just remain allegations? Should there not be a step taken further to ensure that we use the institutional mechanisms set to curb issues like corruption, to address these issues? But I mean, we are in Nigeria where issues like this are mostly left for the people to just, I mean, complain about them without necessarily the institutions put in place carrying out their responsibility. And of course, we've seen in one of the headlines, as we read, that there's a petition by the APC to the EFCC giving them 72 hours ultimatum that they should investigate the presidential candidate of the PDP. And the PDP has also responded. Well, I think that, I mean, on both sides, these allegations are allegations that are very strong. And for some of them, this is not the first time they're hearing that. I mean, we've had instances where these things have come up over time. But if we are being serious, if we are going to be serious with what we actually want in Nigeria, I think these things should not be left to be more media rantings. The EFCC should do their job. And on the part of the EFCC, I think caution should also be taken. It should be taken to the extent that, I mean, we are conscious of the fact that, I mean, the APC is the ruling party, for example. And so there may be that possibility that, I mean, the government of the day may want to use the institutions of government to withhold a particular candidate. But then we now have a situation where the allegations on both sides. So ideally we expect that if the institutional mechanisms put in place to ensure that individuals act rightly are going to be used, then it should be used without fear or favor. There should be no bias, there should be no form of, oh, this person is my party, this one is not. I mean, these are allegations that boils down to the character of the person who wants to be the president of our country. And of course, if we are going to take them seriously, then we should be able to use our institutions to check these things, because, I mean, I think our country, we've gotten to a point where we should do away with the complaining, this system of complaining without doing anything. And it's unfortunate that we have so many laws that in most instances where the need arises for us to make use of this law, to enforce these laws, we do little or nothing about the enforcement mechanism. And so in this instance, I think attention should be paid to using the institutions to ensure that some of these things are looked into. And I mean, these are allegations. I mean, the allegations that touches on even the qualification of these persons to even be the president of our country. And I think that on the part of these aspirants too, the investigation and of course possible, if they are cleared, possibly, it will also do them some good too, so that, I mean, for future reference too, I mean, when people make reference to some of these things, they can also by themselves beat their hands on the chest and say, okay, I've been cleared by so body of these allegations. But
taking into consideration that elections are 39 days away from now, do you think all of this, like what you just made mention, the agencies doing their job, do you think they have that time to do this job? Because let's say, for instance, the EFCC decides to take a case up against any of the presidential candidates, it ends up in court. How fast or how soon do you think the court will pass a judgment that will put an end to all of this before the general elections?
But the thing is that even if they are going to take any of the allegations seriously, they won't just wake up and go to court. There must be investigation done first. And of course, it is as a result of the investigation that you will know whether or not you should approach the court for redress against any of the persons who has strong evidence against them for the allegations that have been leveled against them. But beyond all of these issues of going to court and also using the institution, I think some of the concerns too with issues like this is the fact that politicians in Nigeria will always wait till when it's time for election, for example, that's when allegations here and there will begin to come. But I think that if we want to take a step further to ensure we have a saner climb, a climb that, I mean, we take what is meant to be serious, we should be able to address issues like this long before, I mean, times like this come up. Because, I mean, like you said, election is just few days away, and we know that, I mean, if anything serious should be done at this point, we will definitely have situations where some persons will be crying witch hunting here and there. But I mean, beyond crying witch hunting, we have a government that from day one they've been crying. So they've been singing anti-corruption, and so we now have a situation where, I mean, for a time like this, where Nigerians have to make a decision on who should run the affairs of the country, members of the same government that have been crying anti-corruption are the ones who are now laying allegations of corruption that ordinarily should have been addressed long ago. So, I mean, all what I'm saying is the fact that we should have a different approach to some of these things. I mean, beyond the situation we find ourselves now, subsequently we should have situations where we should be able to deal with situations as they present themselves, and not necessarily doing them for political convenience or in order to score a cheap political point on both sides, regardless of who is concerned. I think that these are issues that we should take seriously as individuals of our country, so that we can always make things right when we need to make those things right.
Like you just made mention, taking things seriously, not waiting for the government. Now you said as individuals of the country. But do you think Nigerians actually pay attention to all of these things? Because we have a part of this. I think this is from the Daily Trust newspaper this morning, that says APC to PDP, we are not moved by your rented crowds. So, meaning Nigerians are still willing to be bought over during this electioneering period. Is that a sign of readiness? That's not a sign of readiness, if you ask me.
Well, the thing is that situations like this are bound to happen. I think that the fact that we all have different faces tells you a whole lot about how we have different orientations and mindsets. So, as much as the vast majority of Nigerians want an ideal society where they have equal opportunities to education, jobs, and every other thing that makes a society a better place, there are those who even when, I mean, things are hard, they do not mind selling themselves out. And so when you hear issues of rented crowds, vote buying and all, it tells you about how even when some persons are determined to make things work, you will always have those who are not, who
do not share the same
they do not share the same opinion, and they do not mind what the momentary gains they get, how it affects the longer span of things that they are going to see in the society. So all of this stems down to the fact that when the society is working well, it does not work well for just one person. It works for whether the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yeah.
And so regardless of where you find yourself, I think we should be able to have that reorientation, having a mindset that issues of insecurity does not affect me because I am Etaba. It affects each and every one of us because within the place where we find ourselves, there's that threat of insecurity.
Yes.
And so it does not have affiliation. It does not affect you because you're from here, a particular place, or because you're a man or a woman. It affects you because within that place that you find yourself, that the government has failed to live up to its expectation of protecting lives and properties, they're also going to be affected. So these things will not affect us. They are not peculiar to anybody. When it's good, it goes down to everybody, and when the situation is bad, it goes down to everybody. So we must be able to sit up and understand that it is our collective effort that will make the society a better place. Yeah.
Oh, all right, now let's see what we have on the issues of insecurity. And this headline is from The Nation this morning. It says, "One killed as hoodlum burn INEC office in Enugu." And this is not the first, it's not the second, it's not even the 10th attack on INEC office, especially in the eastern part of the country. And then one would be wondering, what exactly do you think is going on? Yeah. And INEC is saying there's no plans of postponement of the forthcoming elections. But then these attacks are persistent. What exactly do you think is the problem, and how do you think this problem can be fixed? Because with the rate of this constant attacks, I don't think we might end up having an election.
Well, it's quite an unfortunate situation that few days to an election we still have incidents of INEC offices being burnt. I mean, offices of the election umpire, the persons who are responsible for conducting the elections, their offices are not even secured, it's being burned down. So it tells you it tells you about, one, the readiness of the government to even conduct the election in the first place, and the instruments they've put in place to ensure that people can go and vote, and the security of vote, and also the security of the voters to those who are going to vote. And so at this point we still have these realities. I mean, it tells us a whole lot about what the government is doing to ensure that there is security in the land during the course of the election. And I must say that with these realities, I think the government still has to do a whole lot, because if we continue like this, just like you are wondering, is it possible for us to have an election where INEC offices are being burnt? I mean, these things will always put fears in the minds of even the electorates themselves, because as they always say, somebody who is alive, is that person who is alive that can go and vote. And so it tells you how individuals feel they need to be secure first before they go and vote. And so we should not have these incidents at this point. And it also boils down to the leadership too. I think we have to look at the attitude of the leadership towards these issues. This is not the first time we're having an incident of an INEC office being burnt down. Yeah. So at this stage, issues that we should be able to address now, who are the persons behind these things? The fact that they've not even been able to identify a particular group of persons that are behind these things is also a problem, because we keep hearing of unknown gunmen here and there, but behind this toga of unknown gunmen, who are the names that can be mentioned for these things? Are we saying that in the Nigerian society that we find ourselves today, if something happens here, we do not have institutions that can identify persons behind these things and take measures to ensure that, I mean, these issues are properly handled? So, the point I'm making is simply the fact that we need a leadership that is responsive to the extent that beyond telling us that, oh, this is the situation that has happened, this is an INEC office has been burned down, we should be able to hear things like, this is the person behind this attack, and this is how much we have gone to ensure that this person faces the full wrath of the law. I think when we begin to develop this attitude, move in this direction, we will be able to see a change in some of these things, because I mean, you can't tell me that an INEC office was burnt once, burnt the second time, and even few days of election, we are still having incidents of INEC offices being burnt, and nobody has been named as being responsible for these attacks. Nothing has been done by government to ensure that this person even faces the full wrath of the law. And then we will tell citizens that their lives will be secured on the day of election. I mean, nobody will be that insensible not to realize that little or nothing is done about ensuring that there's security on that day. So for us as citizens of Nigeria, we always make the appeal, of course, and see that the government should live up to expectations and ensure that while we make our way to the election that is to come in a few days' time, the security of lives, people should be confident that when they go out to vote, they will still return back to their houses in good shape.
All right, because like you made mention, we keep hearing of unknown gunmen, but I don't think there's anybody in the world that is unknown.
Yeah.
If you are unknown to me, you are known to somebody.
Yeah.
And this particular INEC attack on INEC office happened in Enugu South local government area. So if the person is not known to me, he might be unknown to me, but he's known to somebody. Yeah. If not in the village, in the local government, wherever, somebody knows who these people are. And there's a story on the Punch this morning that says Nigeria's problem needs intervention of traditional institution, and that's according to Oluwo of Iwo Oba Abdurrashid Akanbi. And I agree with this because they said charity begins at home. Yeah. And yes, we know that Nigeria is home to all of us, but in home, you have home. Yeah. So now everybody is more interested in who becomes the president of Nigeria. We are forgetting where we are coming from. And all of these things happened in localities. Wherever this is happening, more like many people in your village, So when they tell you somebody's son, even if you don't know the person, you know who the father is. So all of this, we're more concerned about who becomes president or who becomes governor. Nobody pays attention to the traditional institutions. Do you think that this issue or this fight against insecurity, we're not fighting in the right direction?
Well, since the major highlight on these issues on our traditional system, I think that is another aspect that has to be looked into for the purpose of ensuring that the fight against insecurity, there is progress. And why do I say this? If you look at the pre-colonial African societies, you realize there was that relative peace and stability in the way the society worked. I mean, you had institutions where the traditional chiefs, the kings, under any name that they are being called in given localities, they were so powerful that, I mean, once they're stealing, the village can easily identify who is responsible for this stealing. And so within the current realities that we are facing in our country, I think that beyond playing the relevance of giving blessings to persons when they are running for elections or recognizing that the traditional institutions that exist during the times of election, I think the government has to do more in ensuring that there is proper funding for these traditional institutions so that they too can also discharge their duties effectively. I mean, the African societies used to thrive on the communal living, where we are sensitive as to the fact that whatever affects me affects the larger society, and so because this thing affects the larger society, I should be responsible enough to ensure that I do not play a role in damaging lives and properties. And so if we can come back to this realization by way of strengthening even the traditional institutions, I think it will go a long way, because even the traditional institutions themselves too, they also have to recognize the critical role they play, and they should be able to recognize the fact that it is not just about playing a role in ensuring that the person emerges into office, like what we are seeing, where the consultation every time they will go to a traditional ruler to get blessings, and beyond getting those blessings, the traditional systems too should also strategically position themselves in a way that, I mean, they should create that relevance for politicians themselves to also know that it is not just coming to them for blessing during election, and we should be able to feature them favorably in the course of developing policies and strategies for governance, so that they who are the closest to the people. Because if you look at the hierarchy of government, you realize that the traditional institutions are closer at the level of the rural areas. They know what affects the society on a daily basis, and so they should be able to play a role in ensuring that the decision-making process reflects what the electors expect of government. So the point I'm making is simply the fact that, I mean, it is important that even as we make plans on seeing how we can fight insecurity, the traditional system should be featured probably in those plans, because, I mean, they are closer to the people. They can easily play a role in identifying persons who are responsible for certain mishaps in the society. Yeah.
Earlier in your speech, you made mention of witch hunting some people who feel like, okay, this person should be targeted. Now let's go to Emefiele's story. I remember few months ago he was accused of terrorism, of financing terrorism, and after that he was invited by the Senate to come and defend the new policy of the cashless policy and the new Naira redesign, and he didn't appear before the National Assembly. He said he was sick, and after that there came his annual leave, and he just returned to office. And then we've seen that in all of this few months the DSS has been on his tail, and then you're wondering, he's not the first person to be accused of anti-terrorism of financing terrorism. We've heard instances where the government say we know people financing terrorism but will not name them. We don't see anybody going after them. Why Emefiele, and why the consistent desire to just grab him?
Well, I think if we are going to discuss the issue of the DSS and Emefiele in view, we can't even take away the allegations leveled against the CBN governor by Honorable Budaji, who came out to finger the CBN governor in some stamp duties funds and all. So all of these issues, I think primarily the issues that we need to address in all of this is, first, where is the rule of law in all of these things? Because I think that rule of law stipulates that we are all equal before the law, and so naturally, if a person says you have done this particular thing, you owe yourself a duty to come out and say, okay, I didn't do this thing. Okay. So if we've had certain allegations like that, of course, from Honorable Budaji and other persons who may want to finger the CBN governor in one or two instances, I think it's also, there's a burden placed on him to also come out to and say, okay, this is what it is. It is not as stated by this person. And on the part of the DSS going after him, and they were aware that sometime in December there was an attempt by the DSS to approach the court to get orders giving them the powers to arrest him, and the court refused to grant those orders. So it necessarily tells you that if the court has refused an order for him to be arrested by DSS, it therefore means they can't just go on their own and just arrest him like that. So if we are now seeing instances where there's an attempt to lay siege on him and to arrest him, it tells us, for me, with my background in law, I begin to ask the question of where is the rule of law in all of these things? Is it that institutions of government can just wake up and behave the way they want without necessarily making recourse to the procedures as stipulated by law? But like I've said, beyond them making attempts to also arrest him, he owes himself a duty to come out and, I mean,
defend himself.
Yes, make the facts clearly known to Nigerians on what the true position of things are. Because if somebody says you are guilty of this thing, you've done this one, you refuse to say anything, impliedly you are saying that those things may be true. And so you should be able to come out and, I mean, make your own stance known. While we also, of course, speak to the DSS that they should be careful about how they go about the whole thing, so it doesn't look like, I mean, they're taking laws into their hands and they're acting against orders of court. But
then, since the court has refused that the desire of the DSS to arrest, shouldn't they let it go at this point?
Well, you know, some of these allegations are not just terrorism allegations. The allegations as to misappropriation of funds, the stamp duties funds, for example. So, if, for example, these allegations have been laid, of course, we saw Honorable Budaji coming out to make most of those allegations and all. Like I said earlier, when we were talking about the allegation PDP and APC, the problem we have in Nigeria is that we know that there is a problem, but how we go about solving this problem is another thing.
Yeah.
So, for example, you're making allegations of misappropriation against the CBN governor, for example. I mean, there are institutional measures for ensuring that anybody who misappropriates funds is brought to book. And even when you watch the video by Honorable Budaji, you see him alleging that the president mandated his committee to investigate Emefiele, arrest him, and remove him from office. I watched that video and I saw a whole lot of allegations. I mean, some of those allegations may make sense, But how do you go about ensuring that these allegations are addressed is another concern that we need to look into. Because you can't be saying, okay, the allegations against you are saying that the president mandated you to remove him from office. I mean, not even the CBN Act empowers you as a honorable member to remove Emefiele from office. I mean, the law is clear on who should remove him. I said, but beyond removing him, we are looking at the allegations against him. We should be able to have a system that follows due process of law as stipulated under our enabling laws to ensure that persons are brought to book to face the full wrath of the law.
All right, now let's take a look at the issue of ASU, because interestingly, ASU appeared again on our national dailies, and this one says ASU may sue the federal government over withheld salaries. And we remember last year, October, after the ASU called off the strike, the federal government paid them half month, and the federal government stuck to the no work, no pay policy. Now, ASU wants to take the federal government to court over this particular situation. First, what are your thoughts on that? The no work, no pay policy. Do you think it was the right way to go by the federal government? Because we also need to take into consideration that the economic stand of the country right now. So, with that, what are your thoughts on this whole ASU and federal government issue? And taking into consideration that this has appeared again in the national dailies, you know how it always goes from here. Then every day ASU and federal government keeps appearing, then before you know, we have another strike, which we don't want to happen again. So what are your thoughts on the federal government's move? And do you think that was the move in the right direction? And how do you think this should be sorted out?
All right. I think the last time I was on this TV station on this same issue of ASU, I had advanced the position that the government should go beyond playing tricks on ASU or maintaining the role of I am your master and you are my servant, and so I have the right to dictate for you how, when, and where to carry out your work. They should go beyond that. And all of these issues ASU coming again boils down to the point I made then, that it is high time we have concrete discussions between the government and ASU in terms of them sitting down on a round table to agree on terms and conditions that are favorable to both parties. Because I think that issues like this will always come up where agreements are reached and then a certain party does not keep to the terms of the agreement. I mean, that is what leads to issues like, because it doesn't make sense that for over 7 months in the course of last year, students were at home, and then finally we're privileged to have an agreement between ASU and federal government. It's not even up to 3 months after the support agreement was reached. ASU is still coming up to make the news, threatening to sue the federal government for withholding their salaries. It tells you that the process that led to them calling off the strike did not reflect what they actually were asking for. And it's possible that the government may have gotten what they wanted in the course of the agreement. But if it's an agreement, strictly speaking, within what we know an agreement to be, it should reflect the concerns of both parties. It should be something that favors both parties, so that in the end, you will not have a situation where one person is still crying foul or still laying allegations against the other person that they are not keeping to the terms of this. And so even when you reach this agreement, there should be that truthfulness with keeping to that agreement. You don't reach an agreement and then the next morning you're doing something totally different from it. So moving forward, like I always say, we should be able to have the government bear their minds with ASU. Because I fear that if these concerns are not addressed, in less than no time we have an election, a new government will come in. And when that government comes, the ASU will come again and begin to follow that, because government is in continuity. So when this one finishes and another one comes, they inherit the good and bad side of their predecessor. So if a new government comes, are we not going to still revisit this issue of ASU coming back again to say, oh, this is the situation, this is what was agreed, government has not kept to it, we are going to take the government to court. It's high time, like I said, we should just address these things once and for all. We should be able to give critical hearing to these concerns by us, because we agree that it's not possible to satisfy all the concerns of us. But I tell you, if we have a government that is responsive, a government that is truthful on the discussion table, that tells you this is what we can do, this is what we cannot do, and you are fortunate to reach an agreement on those terms, I'm not sure that we will have this back and forth with ASU and federal government. So they should be able to have concrete discussions so that in the end they have agreement that reflect what both parties want. So I will know that students will not suffer again, because I'm sure that up to this moment some students are still trying to battle with staying at home for 7 months and coming up to complete their studies that they have started long ago. I'm sure there are some of them that it's not just that 7 months that has affected them. Some of them have experienced other strikes before this one. And so all of this will translate to elongating the time they're supposed to spend
in school.
In school, yes.
All right. Now, this one is on issue of economy. 25 million Nigerians risk hunger in 2023. And remember, in 2022, it was said that millions of Nigerians, over 100 million Nigerians, went below the poverty line. Now, 25 million risk hunger in 2023. This issue of the Nigerian economy, where do you think we are not getting it right? Or where do you think we went down the slope? Because it gets worse every day. And we don't even know how to make it get better, because we've had stories of food insecurity, and all of that. People have decided to move into agriculture. That we have the issue of insecurity, fighting agriculture and food production. So this means that before we can get it right, we have to solve the issues of insecurity, which seems like something that we don't see the end coming. Because it's sincerely, because from where I stand, I would say now we have President Muhammadu Buhari. He has tried his best, if I may say, and then we still have the issues of insecurity. And then the APC returning, the APC government is telling us we are coming to fight insecurity, and you're wondering, Buhari is an APC. Whatever ideas you had, why did you give it to him? Then we have the PDP trying to sell us the same thing. We are coming to fight insecurity, which means we all recognize that insecurity is the problem. If they all love Nigerians that much, why didn't they offer their ideas to help solve the issues of insecurity? Nobody's doing that. So we hope that the issues of insecurity, let's just pretend that it ends with the new government. But what if it doesn't?
Well, I think all of these issues boils down to what the process that leads to persons collecting or getting power is all about. Now, you see that in Nigeria, we have a situation where during the electioneering process, just like what we have, you have politicians being very vocal about what they want to do. They sell policies that naturally aligns with what the citizens expect. They tell you they want to do this, they want to do that, and when you listen to them, there's that hope, there are so much hope in the minds of Nigerians. But beyond all of these promises that are made, when they get to office, we see a totally different approach to some of these things that they were advocating while they were seeking to be in office. And so this ultimately translates to the fact that we should be able to have responsive politicians, persons who do not make promises for the fun of making promises and just for the purpose of, pleasing the citizens when it is time to vote, and then in the end, when they now get power, they do something totally different. Because there's no way you will tell us this is what you want to do, and we are pleased with what you are advocating, and then in the end, you get to office and you don't do it. You expect that people should be happy. It doesn't work that way. And so we should be able to have an attitudinal change from those who seek to hold leadership offices in our country. They should be able to tell us things that are feasible, things that they know will naturally drive the change we want to see in our country. I'm not necessarily saying things because you feel at this given point in time, these are the things you should say to please the citizens and get their vote. That is something that is morally unfair.
But don't you think that's what the citizens want to hear?
But the point I'm making is this. Do not say these things because that is what the citizens want to hear. Beyond wanting to please the citizens in terms of saying what they want to hear, when it comes to implementation strategy and putting up policies that will govern the society, you should also do things that the citizens want to see. That's what we are saying. So do not just come and tell us that you want to do this because the citizens want to hear these things. Beyond hearing, take a step further and do these things because you know that these are the things that the citizens expect. Because like I always say, Nigeria, we've had these incidents repeat itself on different occasions, and we do this. The next thing, they get into office, they're doing something totally different. And that's where the problem lies. So if we are going to have a leadership that is committed to what they say, beyond saying, they take a step to act what they are saying, I think some of these concerns will be addressed, and they should be careful enough not just to say these things because they want to impress the citizens. They should say these things and consider the possibility of doing these things. If you know it's going to be difficult, that is why, I mean, government ordinarily consults with the people. And it's unfortunate that we do not have instances in Nigeria where we create referendums, for example, where citizens also make their inputs directly. I mean, beyond the representation we have, let's say at the National Assembly, for example. We should also have a direct engagement system where the individuals themselves also make their inputs to the government as to what their expectations are. Because when we have all of these opportunities, you see that government now becomes everybody's business. So even when it is difficult for the government to come up with policies that reflect what the citizens want, the citizens also make their inputs as to, okay, this is what we think is going to drive home this change I want to see. And in the end, I mean, it becomes everybody's business. But in Nigeria, because I am in power, I expect that, I mean, I am all-knowing. I do not necessarily have to conform to what the citizens may want or give them an opportunity to tell me what to do. I just sit down, take all the stress, take all the pressure, and in the end, nothing works. So let's have a system that during the electioneering process, it reflects what the individuals want. And then in the time of policy making and formulation, and even implementation of the policies, it also reflects the ideas and the ideas that the individuals are propagating in the society. All right, thank you so much for coming on the program. It's been amazing talking to you. Thank you so much for your thoughts and your contributions on the topics. Thank you. Thank you very much. All right, that was our conversation with Etaba Agbo. He is a public affairs analyst and also a legal practitioner. And with that, we'll draw the curtain today on the press, reaching you live from the Abuja studios of KAFTAN Television. Till I come your way tomorrow, I am Sandra. Agbo.